Alas, poor Yorick. You may recognize that as a quote from Hamlet by William Shakespeare. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about Shakespeare, enjoying it in our family. If it's something that scares you or if it's something you love already, I hope that you'll find some good tips and ideas here. I'm Amy with Humility and Doxology, and I love Shakespeare. I enjoy it on my own, and there are a few things I love as much as sharing it with my children. Sharing that love for Shakespeare's beautiful language and reciting it and laughing with my children, William Shakespeare. I have 5 children. The oldest is 13, the youngest just turned 4, and we've been memorizing and enjoying Shakespeare for, I don't know, as long as I can remember in our school age of the kids. So you may think, even the young kids? Are you doing Shakespeare even with the younger children? And indeed I am, but let me tell you a little bit about what that looks like. So Shakespeare is fun. If I can just convince you of one thing today, it's that Shakespeare is fun. Shakespeare isn't scary, it's not esoteric, it's not just for the elites, it's not just for people who enjoy flowery language and drama, although, I mean, if you enjoy those things, you'll definitely enjoy Shakespeare. But Shakespeare is, in so many ways, very relatable and down to earth. Even my, elementary school kids will pick up on the jests and the humor, the turns of phrases. Shakespeare didn't write his plays to be read and studied as literature and analyzed by students at a desk. He wrote these plays to be enjoyed by the masses. They were the pop culture of his days. He wrote them to be heard and to be seen, acted out. And so when you read Shakespeare aloud and you do it with pizzazz and enthusiasm, you're going to get much more out of it than if you just sit there and assign it to your children to read. So Shakespeare is fun. There's beautiful language, there's clever humor, there's some delightful insults that especially your middle schoolers will probably love, and you can sneakily turn that into copy work or a free writing exercise. Anytime they catch a great insult, they could keep track of those in their journal, in their reading journal. Fun little side writing tip there for you. And you're going to find many recognizable phrases and aphorisms that come directly from Shakespeare. And that can be another fun thing as you're reading or reciting a passage of Shakespeare, to pick up on things maybe they've heard in other places, or to kind of be like, hey guys, you will hear this phrase, "To thine own self be true," to pick something else from Hamlet. Let's see if we can find that in any of our other reading this year. So definitely be talking about these things, telling your children, hey, Shakespeare is the first guy who came up with that, but how many people even know the source material for that quote or phrase or word? Shakespeare is also produced storylines that are going to be recognizable in many other genres, in other plays and other books, just even in allusions. I mean, a famous one that most of you probably know, West Side Story, the famous musical, is obviously derived from this whole Romeo and Juliet trope. Just recently, I was watching an NCIS episode, which actually referenced some characters as the Capulets and the Montagues. So there again, if you didn't know your Shakespeare, you might not pick up on that allusion and what that's telling you about the storyline. So Shakespeare is just fun. It's full of all these great allusions and ideas and turns of phrases. But of course, I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that Shakespeare is also challenging. The style is something that you may not be used to, and if you've had a bad experience in the past with it, you may associate it with dry and boring and scary English class, in which case I'm very sorry for you, but stick around, because you can make a different experience for your children. there's sort of that intimidation factor, like, oh, I don't know enough to teach Shakespeare. I don't understand it exactly. And there is some semi-scandalous content depending on the play. Like I said, Shakespeare wrote this for the masses, and he definitely has some scatological humor, some things that you might think, I don't really want to explain that to my children. So there's definitely those challenges that can arise as you approach Shakespeare, especially with your younger children. When it comes to the content concerns, I guess I would offer these sort of words of comfort or assurance. Number one, because of the esoteric language, a lot of the risque content is going to be completely missed by your children. It just is. And that's why, even though as a parent, you may find it helpful to have a cheat sheet around, the Shakespeare Made Easy series takes the original Shakespeare on one side and a modern sort of translation on the other. This is a great tool to have as a teacher or as a parent if you are trying to understand what's going on, but don't hand this to your children. One, it's great if they can miss some of those things when they're younger. Two, it makes it lazy and you miss the beauty of Shakespeare. But so there's one thing. A lot of the language actually disguises some of the humor. Unless you're watching it on film, which is why I'll talk a little bit about film later and its usefulness, but you do have to be careful. I encourage you to preview any of the Shakespeare films before you would show them to any of your children, because a lot of times the actors are able to portray, as good actors do, the meanings of some of these phrases and words that the children might have missed, and now they've seen it, and now they kind of know something's going on there. And then if you are choosing portions to recite, portions to read or memorize, you can just pick things that aren't going to have content that you find objectionable, content that's age appropriate for whatever age your children have. And there's so much good material that don't let worries about maybe a few things that aren't quite age appropriate dissuade you from all of Shakespeare together. Okay, so where do you start, and how are there any good resources for incorporating Shakespeare studies? There's a ton. I have a list here, so I'm going to try not to forget one of my favorite things, that I'll round all these up in the blog post, so you don't have to frantically scribble them down now. And if you know any other really great resources, please let me know, and talk to your friends and see if any of them have ideas as well. We can get some crowdsourcing going on. Okay, so an obvious first place to start is a retelling. This is Tales from Shakespeare by Charles and Mary Lamb is a great retelling, and it's been around for a couple hundred years now. And one of the things I love about this, I know some people say not to start with this, to start with the E. Nesbit tales, beautiful tales retold from Shakespeare. I'll put the title in the post, because some people find this a little bit more difficult to understand. But I've never run into that problem with my children reading it out loud, certainly. And I remember enjoying it as a youth, as myself. So I love it because it does incorporate some of the original phrases and lines from Shakespeare's play that you'll then recognize when you're reading the actual play. But it just gives a clear plot summary of many, not all, but many of Shakespeare's plays, so that then when you go to the play, you have a clue what's happening, because they're very complicated, right? There's multiple plot lines, multiple characters. It can get a little tricky if you're not familiar with the storyline. So a great place to start is just read a plot summary, a retelling. And there's this version and others that I will make sure to link to. Another great tool is How to Teach Your Children Shakespeare by Ken Ludwig. And if you have never tried memorizing any Shakespeare, go ahead and start with this. This will definitely take away the intimidation factor. He chooses certain famous passages that he feels are good places to start. So you don't even have to pick the passages yourself. You can just follow his plan. He has explanations about some of the language, tips for memory, how to memorize, information about the play. So this is a great tool. Another thing, you remember earlier I mentioned how Shakespeare didn't design his plays to be read. He designed them to be watched. Well, then I said, okay, you don't necessarily want to just take your kids and watch a Shakespeare movie or a Shakespeare production, depending on their age. Again, like if you're talking junior high, high school, please take them to a live production of Shakespeare. That'd be awesome. But audio dramas are a great tool. So recently, well, not recently, a few years ago, my kids got into the How to Train Your Dragon series, audiobook series, and it happened to be narrated by David Tennant. Well, imagine their delight when I got the Comedy of Errors audio drama for them, and I'll have the specific one we listened to. I'll put that in the post. And one of the main characters is acted by David Tennant. So there was that sort of immediate connection with the voice that they recognized as a narrator. And one of the most joyful things to me was driving around town with our audiobook on in the van and having my kids laugh at the appropriate moments. This is just Shakespeare, straight Shakespeare. They're not watching anything, but listening to an audio drama, the actors are really able to communicate the meaning of the text. So an audio production of a Shakespeare play is a great tool. Just like any other audiobook, it's super fun. And even if you're not catching every single detail, you're kind of getting the big picture and you're just getting inundated with the beautiful language. So it's a great place to just, again, demystify Shakespeare, make it something that's very common and normal in your family. Even my littlest kids know, like, we just do Shakespeare in our family. Shakespeare's not scary, it's fun. And that's what you're wanting. You're wanting them to love it and to just enjoy it and not be scared or intimidated. Let's see. So, film. I have some playlists on the Humility and Doxology YouTube. I'm starting to collect some playlists where it's comparative Shakespeare. So certain clips from, let's see, I have Much Ado About Nothing, the To Be or Not to Be Hamlet monologue, and some Merchant of Venice, some Shylock monologues, and I guess maybe a few other scenes from Merchant of Venice. And I've curated these playlists so that you're not trying to search through the thousands of videos on YouTube. You can just go straight to these playlists and see how different actors and directors have approached the same scene or the same character. And it's so fun. We love doing that as part of our morning time. This spring, we memorized some passages from Much Ado About Nothing, and the kids loved watching the different versions of those scenes that we had memorized. They loved being able to see them acted out during morning time, and it's really added to our memory work and to our enjoyment and understanding of those scenes. So those film clips are great resources even for younger kids, because then you don't have to worry about maybe some of the inappropriate content if you're just watching it all the way through. Live productions, of course, if you have that as an option. I know many of us don't, but if you do, definitely check those out. There was a really fun live Shakespeare honoring show that was done by the Royal Shakespeare Company, I believe. I'll put the link in the post. And it was live theater. It had all sorts of famous actors and actresses that you would recognize doing different scenes from Shakespeare or different pieces of music. And there was even like dance and all sorts of clever things that were all inspired by Shakespeare. So that was really fun. I super enjoyed that. And that's probably appropriate for more junior and high school age and up. But definitely check that out yourself, mama. So recitations and memory work. We have done a ton of this in our home, and we do it very simply. I choose whatever passage or scene we're going to memorize, and I print it out on a piece of paper, and during our morning time, we simply read it aloud together. Sometimes, if we're feeling frisky, we will act it out dramatically in the living room or the backyard, but often we're literally just reading through it with enthusiasm and excitement, but just reading through it. And over time, as you incorporate that regularly, it's actually amazing how much you actually do memorize and learn. Just in such a simple way. So again, it doesn't have to be complicated. You're not necessarily putting on a play for the homeschool group, although you could, and that would be awesome. You're just in your living room reading enthusiastically and enjoying that language. And it's fun how many of those things become like little inside jokes in your family, like there's a double meaning in that. And I love it when my kids like quote Shakespeare, just like they quote a movie or a book or something like that, when they're just playing and interacting with each other. I'm like, yes, mom win. And then there's some other fun ways just to make Shakespeare kind of fun and play around with Shakespeare. I have another Facebook Live where I talk a little bit about this card game that my in-laws gave me. It is so fun. It's the Great Shakespearean Deaths card game. And the cards actually, as you play the card game, you're comparing famous, I don't know if you can see that, it's backwards. Famous characters from Shakespeare and their death, the famous deaths, and they're judged, they're scored based on speed of death, gore and brutality, fairness, piteousness, dramatic quality, and last words. And so you're getting familiar with the characters in these Shakespeare plays while you're laughing hysterically playing this card game. So really fun, gentle introduction to familiarizing yourself with these Shakespeare characters. And I'll make sure to put that video link below so you can watch that if you want a little bit more information about that game. Another fun thing is Master Puppet Theater. And this includes little finger puppets. Here is Henry IV, I believe. Yeah. And there's background scene. There's some simple excerpts from the plays. And you basically can just, here's a public square. So, my character, whoever it is, can come across and do a little finger puppet presentation of a certain scene from Shakespeare. So there are dozens of these different characters. Richard III, Titania. There sleeps Titania sometimes in the night. Okay, so really fun game, fun thing to add to even your summer plans, right? This doesn't have to be just school. This is just life. It's just fun and Shakespeare. Let's see, have I covered everything? I had so many thoughts and I'm so worried I'm going to have left something off. But if I could leave you with one final word about Shakespeare. When you're talking about your young children especially, but even if this is your first introduction with older children, even if this is the first introduction with like a teenager, don't start by studying Shakespeare. Start by enjoying it. Start by playing with Shakespeare, playing with the words, being exposed to a variety of characters and styles and dialogues and monologues. Just really filling your children and your own heart with joy and delight when it comes to Shakespeare. And if you start there, if you start with Shakespeare being fun and being beautiful and appreciated and just like relishing the words on your tongue like a delicious dish of food, as you then come to the time where you're going to want to study and analyze more deeply and think more critically about the language and the plays themselves, you'll have that beautiful foundation. And I think that the appreciation and even the ability to understand deeply when it's rooted in that joy and delight will be so much better. So enjoy the beauty of Shakespeare and enjoy some of these resources. I have tons more. I own like over 8 copies of Hamlet. I'm a big fan of Shakespeare. So if you have any specific questions, please let me know. I would be happy to help you find good resources and ideas and bounce ideas off of each other. And I hope you enjoy Shakespeare in your home this summer. Talk to you later.